Good morning, friends. We have finished the first unit, and there we have taken as the theme a general introduction to existentialism. The reason why we have started with this particular unit is to introduce you to the new terminologies and thought pattern in the contemporary period. Although I have not followed the chronological order of the history of philosophy, I just took it over this particular unit in order to introduce you to that one. And most of the new terminologies and thoughts are already introduced, provided it is introduced to you, it has gone into you. Otherwise, my taking that as the first unit is of no use. Now we begin another unit as the second one. There I am following more or less chronologically. We start with the philosophy of life. And in this, before I come to philosophy of life, how the history of philosophy goes on. There is a dialectical way of the development of the history of philosophy. Dialectical. What you studied in Hegel is realized in the history of philosophy. Hegel, you studied that history is the unfolding of the dialectics, thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. It is not simply a concept that you have studied, but it is, in reality, it has come to the realization. When you come to when you come to the modern period, we can find it very evidently. We start with the rationalism, just to give a connection, rationalism, and then it goes to the antithesis, that is empiricism. The swinging on the pendulum from this goes to the other extreme. And then what happens? There comes about a synthesis, and that is in Kant. In Kantian criticism, in Kantian thought, Kant was trying to synthesize rationalism and empiricism by his synthetic a priori judgments. The same process continues. I am not going to explain what are the specificity of the various schools, but the same process continues in the process of again going to idealism. And then goes to the other extreme, that is positivism. Positivism, Marx and company. So that is two opposing schools. So to say, these two extremes were synthesized in the philosophy of life or life philosophy. So this is the style of the movement of the history of thought, from one to the other extreme, and then comes the synthesis. Thus the flow continues through the history, not only history of thought, through history. That is the Hegelian principle. And Marx also has accepted that one, and he has applied in his thought pattern as well. So here also we come to philosophy of life after having seen in the second year portion the positivism. You start to conclude, I think, with the Karl Marx. So that is one of the positivists. Okay. So having said that one, we are now taking up, come to the unit of philosophy of life or life philosophy. Or something, why we call a few philosophers as philosophers of life. There is some special unifying characteristic. As the name suggests, it attempts at explaining the whole reality in terms of life. That means everything is moving, alive, even the non-living beings, stones and everything is including the whole of reality is in the process of movement. Everything is a movement. That is the meaning of why the term life philosophy is given to some of the philosophers is because they consider reality as the whole cosmos is moving, is becoming. Then what is reality? Reality or the matter is accepted only as the byproduct of this movement. Byproduct. What is a byproduct? A byproduct is a product that gets produced in the process of producing something else. You are producing something, you are moving towards in view of that one. But in the process of producing something else get produced. In the process of movement, something gets moved or something becomes something. The reality is not that which is to which you are moving. In the movement is the whole of reality. But then, if at all we find some matter, it is because it is to be taken as the byproduct of this movement. There's a corresponding term in the corresponding to byproduct, namely in the process of proving something else gets proved. I just forget that term now. A corollary. There is a term. So just as in the industrial world, we speak about byproduct. Plastic is a byproduct. In the process of purifying the crude oil, their purpose is to produce the pure oil, pure petrol. In that process, something else they get. That is they are called a byproduct. So they are not producing plastic. Plastic is only something that gets produced in the process of producing something else. So also in the process of proving something else also gets proved. So corresponding to byproduct, in logic we call corollary. Corollary, that is is a corollary. That means something else gets proved. But I am not trying, that is not my main purpose of applying logic or reflection, but I am proving something else. I am reflecting on something else. In the process of that one, something else gets proved. That is called corollary, just as a byproduct. So in the life philosophy, for our purpose, we are taking two philosophers, two sample philosophers. In fact, in most of the different schools of thought, I have taken two each as a sample one. And the first one is Arthur Schopenhauer. The other one is Friedrich Nietzsche. We will be spending more time on Nietzsche's philosophy because of the importance, but then we'll just give a kind of just a rough outline, not outline, something, basically what is required of Schopenhauer. We begin with that one, and then we spend more time for Nietzsche. So Arthur Schopenhauer, the spelling, don't forget, Schopenhauer. Yes, Schopenhauer. Schopenhauer. So there is only one spelling for a name. So this is the spelling. So just speak something about his life and works. A German philosopher of pessimism. Now, both Nietzsche and Schopenhauer, both are philosophers of life. Nietzsche and Schopenhauer, or Schopenhauer and Nietzsche, both are philosophers' life. But then one is the specificity of one as different from the other is Schopenhauer is a pessimist. And Nietzsche is a nihilist. Nihilist, okay. So Schopenhauer's philosophy is referred to as pessimism, whereas Nietzsche's philosophy as nihilism. That differentiates Schopenhauer and Nietzsche as philosophers of life. So he's a German philosopher of pessimism and who gave much importance for will in his thought. So I don't have to go through all the life. Something that is philosophically important. In the third year philosophers, when I take, I'm not giving the whole history or the biography of the person. I'm not interested in that one. But I refer only to those events and aspects which are of some relevance for his thought. Other one you can read any book and find out, but they are not that important. So he was born of a businessman, and then something to be noted is that his father committed suicide. Whatever be the reason, that is the family background that he has. Suicide, something negative. And then what about his mother? His relation to mother was not that pleasant. It became more antagonistic to the point of total separation. So we find him to be unrelated both to the father by death, and mother by relation, unrelated or de-linked from father and mother. So that only points out some sort of the aspects of his life which are typically little negative or little dark. Because his father was a businessman, and businessman moving from one country to another country. Europe is not a large country as ours. So for business, they move from one country to another, and the family also was moving along with him. As a result, Schopenhauer had an education that was unconventional. That means not in one place moving step by step the same process, but rather since one place for some years, another place for a few other years, and so on. So therefore it is not so conventionally it was not built up. So that we find some in his regarding the education. Then for some time he happened to be teaching, but there also there was negative experience. It was not very appreciated, or he was not a good teacher either. It happened to be so. So I'm just pointing out all this negative or the darkness in his life may have contributed to his thought. That's why I'm referring only to those aspects. Especially in the contemporary period, life and thought are closely related. When you come to Kierkegaard, more about that when I'll speak. There's a close relation between life and thought. It is not abstract thinking. It is not armchair philosophy as it used to be in the traditional thought. Philosophy is emerging from your experience, you with all your experiences. That has got its coloring. So when you studied existentialism, something of that we have seen. One of the characteristics of existentialism was the second one, although we said existence as a starting of existential thought, we said existence as experienced by oneself. So each philosopher had their own experience of existence. Therefore, that gave a coloring, a specific coloring for their thought. So there is a close relation between the life, the biography, and the philosophy, where you can find, especially since philosophy is brought down to the earth, it is no more uprooting yourself, dealing yourself from the reality of this world to the other world. That is not the philosophy. Philosophy is rooted here and now. So the way your life, that has influence. So also here in the case of Schopenhauer, we can find that one to some extent. So his teaching experience was rather disappointing, and then he completed his doctoral dissertation or thesis, that fourfold root of the principle of sufficient reason, according to Aristotle. So that was the thesis that he took, and then that is published. And besides that one, a few important books I have given: Freedom of the Will, The Foundation of Reason, the Foundation of Morality, etc. When he died in Frankfurt, he had a growing circle of admirers, mainly abroad. So only when he died, the light of the person became more clear. But when he was alive, he was not seen. The worth of the person was not that much evident or that much not seen, for various reasons. So with this little background regarding his life and works, we come to his teaching or doctrine or his philosophy. There I have taken a few important points to refer to. So the first point that we want to refer is the world as will and idea. In fact, you can cover this also as one of the books. I did not give there. So the world as will and idea is one of his important books. The title of this particular thought, the world as will and idea. So, how does he come to this thought? The world is both will and idea. He comes to this conclusion, I have put there, analogically. Now, what is analogically? Analogy, I hope you have heard analogy in St. Thomas philosophy. It shall come the analogy of being. That means being is applied to each reality differently, not the same way. We are only analogically being, according to St. Thomas. Only God is in his fullness. God is the being, and we are also being analogically. In logic also I have referred to this point. When you made the distinction between univocal, equivocal and analogous. And analogous means a term is used for different objects, not exactly same sense, not totally different sense, but partly same, partly different. And there I have given the example. Some of the examples that I gave at that time was, for example, take head. The term head is used of the head, the part of the body. And then we also use the term also for the head of the church, the head of the state, the head of the family. We use the same thing. Not totally different, not identically same. But then there is a prime analogate. What is the what is the head? That part of the body. That is the primary meaning of head. That the most important part of the body that we call as head for the various organisms or living beings, not plants, but all the living organisms. Head is that part of the body, the most important part. We call it, that is the primary meaning of head. But then that meaning is applied, an extended meaning, that is my expression. I am extending the meaning of head by referring to the head of the state, the head of the family, head of the church, head of the village, and so on. So, but then it has got some similarity, at the same time not identically same. So there is partly same, partly different. Here also, Schopenhauer arrives at the conclusion that the world is will and idea analogically. And how analogically? From experience of oneself. He looks at himself and the way philosophers have thought about the human being. I find myself as consisting of two evidently different dimensions of the exterior and the interior. So, I am constituted of there is two dimensions in every human being, that is the exterior and the interior, which may be called in different terms, like the exterior may be called as the body, the other one as the spirit or soul. In Kantian language we can say this is the phenomenon and this is the noumenon. So whatever be the term that are used, there is in every human being is constituted of an exterior dimension that is not over. There is also an inner dimension, an interior dimension, and that he calls it as the will. The will as the inner interior dimension of interior dimension, and the body, the exterior, the material aspect, that is the exterior dimension. Now, that is what I find in myself, in every human being, and that is accepted by almost all the philosophers of old. He also says there is these two dimensions are there. And then he says, it must be true also of the whole reality. The whole world also must be having this twofold dimension, just as every human being is having these two dimensions, so also the whole of the world, the whole reality must be having this twofold dimension of an interior dimension and an exterior dimension. Now and he calls that will as the interior dimension. Will as the interior dimension passing through the whole of reality. Now what is will for him? Will is not in the limited sense that we use about the will, decision, choice. There is only one aspect of, but he is giving an extended meaning for will. Will for him is a non-rational force, a striving, a moving, a dynamism. That moving dimension, the whole reality has got something that is moving dimension, which is not seen, but it is there. A moving, dynamic, alive. That dimension, that is he calls it as the will, which is extended to everything. The whole of reality is permeated by the will. There is something, a moving is there. That moving, which we cannot pinpoint, we cannot touch and show. This is the will, but at the same time there is, every reality has got.